all kinds of people, and they are learning in different ways. I did 2 research projects at our university, and students responded to questions in very different ways. I'm going to get into that later, but it's interesting to find out what helps our learners to learn. But the most important thing is to remember is that we need to mix methods. Can everyone hear? Is it okay? Because I can't see the chat box. Can you let me know if people can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay, good. Okay, so maybe you can if people type in the chat because I can't see it. If you can tell me what people think is going on in this drawing. If people write their things in. Anyone have any ideas?
We are hearing you. We can listen you
Yeah.
well.
Well, I can't read the chat box. So if anyone types in what they think is happening here, you could read it to me.
Okay. Okay.
I can
So
only see my slides.
all right. So Ashok sir. Ashok sir.
Does anyone have any idea of what's going on in this classroom?
Yes.
Okay, and what is that?
I think the various people are thinking on the part of the learners.
Okay, well, the little girl thinks she is showing a flower. And the others are interpreting what she is showing as an airplane or a cat or a horse or a bumblebee. So what's going on is that very often when we think that we've made something clear to our learners, they understand something in a completely different way. And sometimes we simply have to say it in a different way, do it in a different way, express it in a different way so that they understand what we're talking about. Does that make sense to everyone? I hope so. So, going on in the classroom, as I said, most classes have a variety of types. And we teachers often teach in the way we learn. If we are very visual, we write a lot. If we're auditory, we might not have handouts. So we need to mix our methods. We also need to help our learners stretch out of their styles and give them ideas on successful strategies. And very important is to harmonize, meaning to meet our learners where they are. So if they need to see something, put it in writing, and then we can challenge them. If we challenge them before we've made them comfortable, we may lose them. And when they understand these styles, the metacognition, they gain more insight onto their learning process. And they also become more tolerant. So, myths and misconceptions. People do not learn the same. There's been a lot of controversy about learning styles, and I hear from colleagues, oh, you don't need to think about different people. Everybody learns in the same way. No, they don't. But we do not need to teach to each style separately. That is not what we're saying. And it doesn't take too much time to know that they are there in the classroom. They are also not better than others, and it has nothing to do with competence. An auditory learner may have a better accent when speaking. It doesn't mean that they are better language learners. So this is what they are not. They're not an excuse. You can't say, I'm visual, I can't learn to listening comprehensions. Not true. You can still learn. We don't pigeonhole, we don't put them in boxes and saying you can only do that. That is absolutely false. They're not right or wrong. They're not limits. There are no limits on this. They don't indicate competence, as I said, and they are not judgmental. Okay, so we're going to look at these two models today. Sensory perception, which is visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and cognitive processing, which is global and analytic. Am I going too fast? Is this okay?
Yes, yes.
It's okay. Okay. It's hard to tell when I can only see my slides. Okay. So this is the standard model. And if you notice in the center circle, it says VAK, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Then we have visual, auditory, auditory, kinesthetic, visual, kinesthetic, and then just visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So when students are not stressed, they are generally in the middle. They have access to all of these. Maybe not as strong for some than others, but they can access them if they are not uh, impaired with hearing difficulties or seeing difficulties, but the average student. When they get somewhat stressed, they may cut out one of their channels completely. And when they are really stressed, they may cut out two channels and become completely visual, completely auditory, or completely kinesthetic. That's the standard model. However, in research we've done and working for a long time with adolescents, a colleague and I realized that we need to divide the kinesthetic into two categories. Somewhere around puberty, we think it happens that they begin to branch out. Some become kinesthetic motoric. They need to touch things, to do things. They're always moving. And some become kinesthetic emotional. My colleague is kinesthetic motoric. When we went off on seminars to teach, she would take all of her sports equipment with her because she went off to play golf or to judge participants to see who I knew. So we had different needs in both in the kinesthetic area. Okay, so we're going to break these down and we're going to have a look. These are the strategies that visual where they saw something on the page. So they need to take things off the page, like take the vocabulary off the page, write it on little cards, rearrange it in a different order, and learn it again so that they really learn it. Otherwise, they only remember where it was on the page. This is an example of handwriting from a visual learner. This was a university student. To me, it almost looks like primary school. It's very even. She underlined the questions. She was very clear on how she wrote things. And this is another visual learner. It's not quite as nice a handwriting, but she did things like not draw the line through the letters that went down. She tried to copy my little graph. She organized things in a visual way on the page. Okay, and activities. So anything with photos, images, colors, mind maps, any kinds of maps and charts, color-coded systems. So to get them to maybe underline verbs in red or adjectives in blue. I wish I had learned German in this way with the different genders. German has feminine, masculine, and neuter. And I wish I'd learned the words the nouns that way. Word searches, crossword puzzles, all of these things, labeling, drawing, and organizing visually for them is something that helps them. Okay, so this is what I mean by organizing visually. This is from a school book we did several years ago. This was about telecommunications. So they had learned all these words, and then we had some multimedia messaging, Bluetooth, voice over IP, and SMS, short message systems. They had to put the words into the places depending on the height of the letters. So any idea of any word here? Anything from the words in the box that fit below? If you can just tell me something.
Yes, friends, anyone? Might be because of the noise, we muted them all. That's why they are not speaking.
I know. Well, if anyone types in the box, okay. So for example, if you look at MMS, the third one, this is the multimedia messages. So you see the MU are the small letters, then L and T are high, then IME, and then D is high and IA. And then messages, the only one that goes below the line is the G. So this is a way to help visual learners to organize words in their head. Does that make sense? I hope so. And this is the key. You can't see, I didn't have it in the boxes, but that's what it looks like. So that's something you can set up for your learners, and you can, of course, do that as well with distant learning. Okay, auditory learners, they might need to speak. They're the ones that are always talking in class, but often it has to do with them trying to remember things. They may subvocalize, so speaking under their breath, or move in rhythm while learning. They may not take notes. They may need to learn how to do it, but they love class discussions. They might listen to music, and they can generally repeat back very well. But because they learn out loud, they may need to write it down to prepare for a written exam. They could have problems. They learn it like a cassette tape, and if the question on the exam is in the middle of their tape, they have to rewind. They have to go back to the beginning and say everything like the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then they have to go A, B, C, D, F, G, G. They can't just pull it out. And that is an auditory handwriting example. Not easy to get. It was the same class, also a girl. They were about 19 or so at the Teacher Academy here in Austria. And this was the same lesson with the little chart. You can see there is a huge difference in the way auditory learners take notes. Okay. So activities, listening to texts, guided discussion. Buzz groups came from Jeremy Harmer, I believe. It's the idea of picking a topic. So if we take pandemic, let's see, let's try and brainstorm all the words to do with pandemic, maybe the new words, social distancing, flattening the curve, all these words. They brainstorm words that go with a topic. Activities and pronunciation, storytelling, of course, they love any kind of speaking, debates, jokes, and describing words. So have a look. This is a half crossword from a book that I've done for business English. We've done the words. Group A gets one copy and group B gets the other. And so group B does not have, for example, let's take a word. They don't have number 2 down. They ask A, what is 2 down? Group A has to explain it without saying the word. They have to say, well, you dial the phone, but the person who answers is not the person you wanted to call. And wrong number. So this is to get them to explain words without saying the word, and they have to listen, and then they have to fill it in. Okay. So the kinesthetic motoric, they like to move around. I'm sure you've got them in your classroom. They might play with little things. They try things out. Real life experiences are wonderful for them. And they learn with manipulatives, which is anything they can touch, board games, something they actually feel. But when they're home learning, they often walk around their room. They don't like to sit at a desk, but they need to write that down, just like the auditories did. Okay, and that is a kinesthetic handwriting example. This is from a calendar of a grown-up. You can see that she just wrote things in, but she also made boxes because for a kinesthetic, this makes it more tangible. You feel like you can take it off the page. And when she completed a task, she didn't make a tick mark, I'm done. She crossed it out because that makes it really gone for her. It's the act of crossing it out. Okay, so activities for them. I think these are mostly clear. Anything with movement, miming, um, relating it to the real life experience, manipulatives, as I mentioned, running dictations where it's hanging on the board and they run over and then they tell the others what it said, drawing, demonstrating concepts. And this is an activity which I've done often with groups. You make a group, small group, 6 to 8, and they get a list and they have to choose one of the processes or activities. Normally, I don't tell them what the possibilities are. I might give them these 4 things on a piece of paper. And they have to then go through the activity, each person taking a part. So the first one comes to the photocopier, lifts the lid, pushes the button, and it doesn't work. The second one opens the door and finds that there's paper stuck. The third one may pull out the paper. So they are doing it in order, and the others have to guess what the process is. I hope that's clear, and so on. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Great. Okay, so the kinesthetic emotionals, they feel most comfortable in a group in which they like the people. This means they might need a little bit of time to get to know the others in a group before they start. They need to connect learning with positive feelings. Those kids, I mean, I had problems with certain teachers where it was the negative feeling in the classroom that kept me from learning. They personalize their materials, and they might need to find their own reasons. They also want to be creative, and they need to be able to ask someone to help. But they need to learn to put their emotions aside. It's not easy, and sometimes they just need the teacher to talk to them, to say, I understand you're having a hard time. Let's try to put that away until later. One thing you can say is, we all have a rucksack, a backpack we carry with our everyday things in it. When you come in the door, just put it outside, leave it. It'll be there when you're finished, but let's leave it outside while we're learning, and that may help. Okay, the activities, these are the typical things they love: role plays, personalized things. Um, they might like emotional responses, but we have to be very careful with them. Creativity, personal stories. I told my students stories all the time. Personal likes and dislikes, surveys, and cooperative learning, which I'm going to explain to you on the next slide. So cooperative learning, I don't know if everyone is familiar with this. This is a chart you can make at home. It can be different numbers of people. This is for 16 students. So I would write in the names where it says person A1, person A2. I write in those names at home. I make sure it's flexible enough in case somebody isn't there. Then when we get to class, I tell them where they are. And first, I begin by making the home group. I put all the A's together and I say, okay, you are group A. I'd like you to find a name for your group and maybe a slogan so that they form an identity as a group. Then I assign them number 1, 2, 3, and 4 in each of those groups. And then I say, okay, I want everyone from group 1 to come here, everyone from group 2, from group 3, from group 4. You are now expert groups. They're no longer with their home group. Each expert group is given either a text or a task or information, something they have to work with, and they become experts on it. You can also give the whole group a text and give them questions to answer, and they work on it. Then they go back in their home groups. And if I have assigned expert group 1 a question, when I ask the question, I ask person 2, 3, or 4. The reason is that person 1 has to give them the answer. We also call this heads together, because when you ask that question, so I might say, does anyone remember what a buzz group is? Okay, person 2, the heads go together, and person 1 who has that answer says, that's when you brainstorm vocabulary on a topic. And then I ask person 2 to tell me. Then I don't say if it's the correct answer. I ask the other experts, was that the correct answer? So what this does is it sets up cooperation in the classroom. They have to depend on each other. And in cases where you have little problems between students, they might not like each other, suddenly they need that person. Suddenly that person becomes important. And this can help relationships in the classroom. I hope this is clear to everyone. It's an excellent way to work with students. A colleague did this in mathematics, and at the end of the semester, she compared with her colleague. They covered the same amount of material, but her group learned to cooperate with each other, which is something employers look for. Okay, so we're going on to the global analytic model. Global is more thinking with the heart, and analytic is more thinking with the brain, making it very simple. The globals tend to remember the whole experience. So forget the manual, I'll figure it out. That's very global. Uh, they like to try things out. That's why they don't need the manual. They perceive things in a holistic way, and they're very relationship oriented. They want to know the others, but they also like to please others. And feelings may be more important than facts, and they are spontaneous. But they do need to learn to take criticism without the emotions. Not easy, I know, but it's still necessary. The activities, because they like to see the whole thing, they like to unjumble or paraphrase. They love spontaneous role plays and anything creative. Discovering the rules from the examples. It's much more interesting for them than learning the rules first. And storytelling, especially when they can create or predict endings. So this activity, these pictures are from ELT Picks, which is a free resource on the internet. You can just type in www.eltpix.com. There are over 26,000 photos for teachers to use, taken by other teachers in groups. And this is every picture tells a story. So I was teaching the past tense in an evening class. It was 9:30 at night. We had another 15 minutes. Everyone was very tired. And I thought, okay, have to wake them up. I said, okay, group one, you 5 people are going to write a story about these 5 people. You 5 are going to write a story about these 5. And what they did last weekend, and they got into some sort of trouble. Well, the heads went together, they began writing, they were all excited. I took the papers home, I corrected them, and the next time they read them out. They loved them because they got to be creative and it was personal. And I didn't have picture prompts, but you can use prompts like these to give to the students. You can print them out and say, okay, write a story about a group and what they did and why there's this picture, and get them to be as creative as they can. So the analytic like to be detailed. They like specifics. They might want to work alone. Those students that don't want to do group work, it's very possible they're alone. Self-motivated, very task-oriented. They don't want all of the talking in groups, just let's get it done. Facts are more important. And criticism, well, they might say, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But they may need to create an overview and not get caught in the details. So these are kinds of activities, any kind of word grids, where you're doing the root of the word, the noun, the adjective, the adverb. They love these. Very organized. Matching, logic puzzles, where they actually have to figure out something. True, false, especially true, false, and doesn't say, and then finding the reason for it. Error correction. Great for those preparing for exams. Any kind of problem solving, critical thinking, structuring, and finding the examples for the rules. Okay, so this is an activity from a book which I'm actually using today in a class, English for Banking and Finance. And you can do this easily when you see the answer key. It's just a matter of knowing what words go where. So what they have to do is to match the definitions to the words. So if we start with repayment terms in the middle, that is number 5, how you have to pay money back to a bank. So once you have that, you know that that's 5, then that column must add to 15. So carry a balance and credit rating have to be numbers that, when added to 5, will come to 15. It's a little difficult to do this without the chat. But do you see how this works? And going across the other way, interest and debit added to 5 will also have to be 15. So when you have all the correct words in the correct place, all the columns and rows and diagonal will add to 15. I hope that makes sense. And if you look at that, those are the numbers. So when you do this, all you need to know is that definition number 6 must go there. Definition number 1 must go there. Definition number 8. You can also do it with translations. You can do the word in, is it Nepalese? I don't know the language, or I could do it in German and English. And they can self edit because they can see if they have added it correctly. Okay, so now we're going to look at an activity which came up in the research I did. I asked my students not what they liked, which is different. I asked them what helped them learn. And all learner types mentioned this activity. This was an activity I did before our midterm exam, which was on grammar. And I can go to the next slide. Well, I'll explain to you how it works. The visual learners said they learned because they saw all the questions. The auditories, it's an active thing, said they liked asking the others and answering. The kinesthetic emotional liked that it was personalized. The kinesthetic motoric were happy they could move around and remembered the activity because of it. The globals learned because the tenses were all on one page, and the analytics said they liked practicing the tenses and making sure they were correct. And this is the activity. It's longer so they can get bingo. So they had to fill this out at home. What were you doing yesterday at 8 p.m.? And they could just write watching TV. What haven't you done for years? Played with dolls. What do you do every morning? Brush my teeth. What are you going to do this evening? Go to the cinema. What food did you like best as a child? Pancakes. Okay. So I would take my page and walk around the class, and I had to ask different people questions. What were you doing yesterday at 8 p.m.? Somebody says yoga. Up, can't use you. I go to the next person. They say watching TV. I say, oh, great. I write that person's name in, and I try to find 5 people in a row who answered the question the same way I did. And then we went through them, if they had any questions, and they really liked it. They felt it helped them to practice the grammar in an interactive way, and it worked for every single learning style for different reasons, which was very interesting to me. Okay, so how we can make these really appeal to everyone? Well, different sensory channels, cognitive processing, making use of strengths. They need to learn new strategies, but we also need to accept how they learn and not say you're doing it wrong. That doesn't help. It gives them a feeling of progress, and it increases especially their motivation, which then can increase the confidence. This is another thing. This picture is from the ELT Picks, and I use it here as an example of how we can take different roads and get to the same place. Something we all need to think about. So we can say, look at this, listen to this, discuss this, imagine you are, and so on. When we use different words, we get attention of different learners. And we can find ways to stretch. When we've done something in writing, we can move it to speaking. When we've done something with listening, we can move it to movement. When we've had movement, we can move it to writing, and so on. So looking specifically at what we've done, we did the organizing visually, the words from communication. So if they had this with multimedia messages, then we can have them speak about the words. When do you use multimedia messaging? When do you use SMS? And so on. The half crossword, I had students do this. They created one for other learners. It gets them speaking again, but also having to be visual about this. And writing. Cooperative learning, after they have spoken about everything, we get them to write summaries. Miming the processes, writing out the process step by step, getting them to practice the sequencing words. First, John did this. Second, Lisa did that. So that they structure and learn to write. Telling the story about the others they've been writing, here they could act the story out. And the magic square, They learned that vocabulary. It was mathematical, but had to add to 15, but then role play a dialogue, make up something using the vocabulary. Now, this is something that is very different than the normal kind of feedback we ask. So I find this question, what helped you learn, helps me to plan the next semester. Why did it help? So what about this activity helped you as an individual to learn something? And what did you remember about it? Then what can you do on your own, especially now with all the distant learning? What can you actually do? Then how can you stretch out of your learning style? What can you do to move to another type of learning? And what else can you do? And these are the roles that preferences play in the classroom. It raises awareness, they become active. As I said, it increases motivation. It's very learner-centered and helps them develop successful strategies. So this, I'm going to stop sharing at some point, and maybe we can discuss some of these questions. The activities that you might want to learn, what would work for you, ideas, how you can stretch, if they go along with your style. So we'll come to that. These are the questions. I think, well, let me just, these are the acknowledgements, but we'll go to questions and I'll stop sharing the screen. And that was the thank you with my email. Okay, so if I stop sharing, I hope I come back to the chat. I still see my screen. Huh. Not sure. How do I get back to seeing the chat?
Okay, Marjorie, what we can do is we can just ask them to, they can ask the questions themselves as well, because they want interaction more. Participants want interaction more.
Okay.
So anyone
Okay,
who
but
wishes to ask the questions, please raise your hand. Might be you will see one animation there and raise hands, and I'll just unmute you, or you can unmute yourself if you want to ask questions.
okay. Okay. Should I exit the do escape with my slides or?
Okay. Let's first let them ask first what they
Sure.
say. Okay.
Okay.
So anyone who wishes to
I can
ask the
go back
questions on, it's
to that.
all about the differentiated instruction type. It's quite interesting topic when majorities send the message to me, and I just told that it's my interest area. Both topics are quite interesting, and this was chosen. So anyone has a question regarding learning preferences or learning styles and these all, please? Anyone? Guna sir? Yes. Yes, please. No queries, Pushpaji and others? Yes, Kalpana has question, I think.
Okay.
Okay, Kalpana ji.
Sir, yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm a teacher. I'm also a teacher, and I want to ask her too about and how these activities can be effective in the context of remote area of Nepal.
In distant learning, you mean?
Area of Nepal, actually, in remote area.
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
Okay, our question is like this. For example, she might have felt that such activities where the physical, let me say, infrastructure, everything is available and the teachers are well trained, it could be possible. Or can it be
Right.
possible to carry out such activities in the remote areas as well? If so,
In
how?
remote. Yeah. Well, I mean, the things like the magic square, of course, the half crossword. I teach only two lessons online. I use Skype for business because that's what I have to use. I don't have the screen, but I send them the PDFs in advance. And then I say, okay, you two are group A, you two are group B, talk to each other. can absolutely do that. Kinesthetic motoric, I honestly don't know how to do this with online teaching. I'm not an expert on that, I'm afraid. But emotional, everything else can absolutely be done in the remote atmosphere. And my students work with PDFs that I send them, and we see each other online. So that's no problem. But you can do role plays. I've heard people doing role plays on Zoom. So that would be the kinesthetic motoric. You just have to, in your context, figure out how to do it. I don't use Zoom for teaching. Does that answer the question?
Okay. So, anyone has queries, please, you can ask the questions. Yes, please. The floor is open for you. If not, then I have one query, Marjorie. The query is that,
Sure.
when I carried out the research on the same topic here in Nepal during my MPhil studies, what I felt is, maximum of the teachers, what they've said is addressing the differences
Yeah.
in the same period. I mean, the 45 minutes duration or 1 hour's duration, same content differently is tough for us. How can you do it? This is what their question was to me. When I
Okay.
just,
How you Okay, to present the same information in different ways.
yes,
Well, okay, so I had a worksheet about Mamma Mia. It was about the movie, and it was a typical worksheet to, I don't know, true, false, or something about the story. So I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is start with the song. So I typed out the words to, I can't remember which one of the songs from the movie Mamma Mia, and I left blanks. I had to fill it in. We listened to the song, so it became listening, but they knew the music, so they were also moving around in their seats a little bit, and then they had to fill in the correct words. You can also, in class, gap text with songs, you can, instead of giving them the words on a piece of paper, you can put the words on little cards, and they have to move the words into the correct order that they hear them. So that's another option. And then we went to the text, so then it became visual. Then I can have them do a role play. I also have a text that I do. It's a text from the New York Times where I give them the vocabulary that I think is difficult. I explain it, and then I have them write a story in groups, what they think, uh, how they think the vocabulary will be used. They come up with their own story, which is a little bit kinesthetic emotional. They read their stories. Everyone's interested in hearing what the others did. Then we read the text. Then I pull out vocabulary, grammar from the text. It becomes very analytical. And at the end, we do a role play on it, which you can also do in a Zoom room. You can have them take on different roles. So it is when you start doing this, things become very apparent right away. One of the books you mentioned, it's there in the acknowledgments, this Creating Activities for Different Learner Types with Ways Goose Press. It is available as an ebook on Amazon. It is not terribly expensive, and it gives you, for example, you can say visual, and you find all these different activities you can do, or auditory and all the activities you can do. And there are examples of, some of them are from, yeah, examples of things you can specifically do in class. Does that help? It's just kind of being creative yourself and thinking, how else can I present the same material? Um, Trying to think of other things. A kinesthetic way to present the short forms in English. So we have the word, we have it's, right? IT apostrophe S. Kinesthetic students want to know what happened to the other I. Why is it it is? How does it become it's? I put it on a piece of paper and then I fold it over to cover the second I and put a paper clip on it. And they see that the I didn't disappear, it's just hidden, and they can open it and see it again. So this is making something very abstract into something kinesthetic. It'd be much easier if I could show you this specifically, but yeah, these kinds of things. Any other questions?
okay. Anyone has any query? Yes, I think Khateuda sir has a question. He's raising his hand. Uh,
Okay.
KHA. Okay. Let me just unmute you, sir. Or you can also unmute yourself, I think. But
Wish I knew how
okay,
to get
I've
back
done.
to the
Okay,
Zoom
please.
screen.
Okay. Thank you, Marjorie, for your wonderful presentation. I just want to state that the reflective practices, that's a tossing thing for me in your presentation, because in most of my training, I use the reflective practices. And
Okay.
what I'm trying is this reflective practices, go to represent the teacher's experiences or the presenter's experiences, or somebody like that. But I like to weld the experience of the teachers and the learning experience of the learners itself, so to be the reflective practices. Can those two things go together?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the feedback questions that I put there, if you find out what helped them learn, that is part of your reflective practice. Say, okay, so the majority of students learned through this activity. Nobody mentioned this other particular activity. And I did write something recently on reflective practice, which is not out yet. But one thing that I learned in my training is when we plan, I have to remember how to do this. When we think back to the classroom, sometimes it's good to do it in third person, to say, okay, Marjorie did this, this, and this. This didn't work. This worked well. And then when I plan to do it in first person, I am going to do more of this tomorrow. I'm going to do more of that
Mhm.
because my students are learning from it. Does that answer your question? I think the feedback questions that I had listed, if you combine those with your reflective practice, you might find that that takes you in a slightly different direction because you're getting different information from the students, which you can reflect on. I'm not an expert on reflective practice. I did some research in writing about it, but this is, I'm a practitioner more than anything. I hope that helps.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you so much. Any more queries? All right. In fact, Manjori, this is the
Yeah.
issue that we have been discussing here, and still the people have been practicing one size fits all concept time and again, and again. I also use the same term that the people, the Paulo Freire is the conduit of banking system has been dominant around here. To avoid it, your topic has depicted a lot of things, and it has highlighted what to do in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just lost this. Yeah.
So
Good. Yeah.
I feel that this is stunning sharing for today's session, and nearly 50 people around there watching, and even Lakshman Gewali is writing here that wonderful presentation. Marjorie rocks. He has written there, Professor Lakshman Gewali. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I wish I could see. I'm afraid if I do escape, I'm not going to see the screen at all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Then,
I don't know how to get out of my
uh,
slides. I will send you the PDFs as handouts later
okay,
today,
thank you.
and you can
Actually,
send them to people.
when I read your articles and the Tomlinson's article, I got a lot of ideas from you these issues and the Tomlinson's issues earlier when I did my research. And wonderful sharing,
Okay, good.
stunning sharing. I know that it will help a lot of people. Thank you so much, Marjorie, on behalf of Nelta Central and Nelta Province
No
7.
problem. Good. Glad it worked in the end. Okay, great. Have
Yes,
a great day, everyone.
thank you. And
Okay.
we'll be awarding you electronically with the certificate. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you. Okay. So,
Okay.
thank you. So, friends, the wonderful session we had, and we learned a lot of ideas. Though the people take it how to address these all things, but it's a necessity now. We need it. It's indeed a need of the day that we need to address the differences. Else, we cannot, tease the students. So we just bark in front of them. This is what I say. So, Now we have another session by Pusparaji. Unfortunately, because of electricity problem, we could not go for his session earlier. Puspaji, are you there? Puspaji? Okay, might be Pusparaj. Yes, Puspaji is there. And then Puspaji, I have been well acquainted to him for just few days only, but he's the quite positive vibe. His positive vibe has made me lure towards him. Last time when the scholars association Nepal session was there, the Gunaji and others, there were some finger counted people. The way they interacted, these that made me a bit attracted towards them as well. And I felt, I requested Puspaji to share here, and he accepted this request as well. And he has been teaching in Birendra Sainik, Sallaghari. He teaches there. And Lakshman sir, are you there? Lakshman Bhatta sir?
Sir, permit me to share the screen.
Yes, sir.
You're not given.
Yes,
You're
sir, I'm
not
here.
okay. Okay, sir. Let me permit him to share the screen. And then Lakshman sir, you just please introduce Puspa sir formally.
Okay, thank you so much, Dian sir, host and coordinator of this virtual international conference hosted by Nelta, Sudur Pashchim province. First and foremost, please accept my warm and hearty greetings. Namaste and a very good afternoon. My name is Lakshman Datta Bhatta. I'm chair of Nelta Kailali. Thank you so much, dear sir, for giving me this opportunity to introduce one of the today's presenter, third presenter of the first day, a respected chairperson of this virtual international conference and president of Nelta Sudur Pashchim province, and President Madam, respected Motikalla Subhadevan, and respected all past presidents and advisors to